So I'm sure we're all very excited. The ta-da, Guru Rinpoche's taken up abode here. They'll all come off. They stay in place for the consecration. Yeah, yeah. And these are covered over because they're highest yoga tantra, and for people who come in and don't have highest yoga tantra. We can check. I'm not sure. I mean, they'll have to be revealed. Wonderful. Very exciting.
Who ended up lifting
on? John and one of the guys who was here. I'm not sure who it was in the end. Brian, I think. Not someone youngish. We don't have that. Somebody. Oh, we do have. There was Yvonne's husband came along. There was a group. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So they managed to get that on. So wow. Wonderful job. So we're on page 26. So we're continuing on here on the third point. When the environment and its inhabitants overflow with unwholesomeness, transform adverse circumstances into the path to enlightenment, apply meditation immediately at every opportunity. The supreme method is accompanied by the 4 practices. So we're on this third line of the third verse, apply meditation immediately at every opportunity. So we can think that throughout the day, of course, apart from any formal meditation practice that we have, that throughout the day, every, if you like, waiting moment or pause moment can be transformed into a meditating moment. So it's an opportunity where whatever we're waiting for, not engaging in other activities. Many years ago at one of our, I think it was the Mind in Its Potential conference, actually, when Venerable Sangye Kadro was a speaker and running a workshop. And in between times when I'd go to her hotel room to pick her up or whatever, she'd always be there meditating, always be there meditating. I remember also one time Alan Wallace, the first time he came to Sydney, first time he came to Australia, and we wanted on our free day to take him out, of course. And so there was an exhibition in the Art Gallery, New South Wales, of goddesses. So it was Hindu and Buddhist representations. And so we wanted to take him there, and he wanted to stay in his hotel meditating. So we thought, oh, he's not going to come. And then he changed his mind and said, no, I've decided it's beneficial. So we were going around, and when we got to the Tara room, we all sat down and did meditation. He guided meditation in the Tara room. It was absolutely wonderful. Yeah. Anyway, so taking, every so that we can throughout the day establish a ground state that is one of meditation, and particularly in relation to thought transformation, to checking in with ourselves. And one thing that I haven't heard recently, but is the mindfulness app. I don't know if you've tried putting that on your phone. And you can set it at random so that the bell goes off and then you stop. I remember I'd be having conversations with someone and their bell would go off, or my bell would go off. We'd take a minute for meditation and then continue the conversation. So these are just tools that can assist us to remember to apply meditation. And then it says immediately. Immediately at every opportunity, so that while we, at the traffic lights, keep your eyes open in case they turn green. But it gives us those moments rather than thinking about, whatever mundane things we're thinking about, to really, take those opportunities to, at pep of the day, to immerse our mind in practice. And then this quote from Geshe Rabten and Geshe Darge's advice from a spiritual friend. So this is a commentary on the 7-point mind training. In fact, within the environment of this age, many more targets will be found at which to aim our practice. So at this time of the environment of this age being time of the 5 degenerations. So we certainly gives us many, many opportunities to practice a number of the increasing minds of anger, rage, conflict, discontent. You know, it comes at us from all angles. And so to think, you know, increasing physical illness, mental illnesses, environmental, well, we can see climate change, the quality of relationships going down and, you know, being more difficult, more fractured, and the disturbance of the elements that we see that bring, you know, earthquakes, floods. And I think Victoria's just gone from bushfire to flood, you know, the same places. So this is becoming more and more common and earlier on in the season than we expect. So it says at these very times we must be fully prepared by having trained the mind well. So His Holiness in a teaching just the other day was mentioning that despite all the difficulties, problems and so forth that he's encountered, never has he actually expressed anger. So many years ago, when Rachel Cohn was interviewing him at a time of a crackdown in Tibet, when she said, surely you get angry when you see the situation in Tibet. And His Holiness said, I observe that anger arise in my mind. I observe it fade away 1 minute. So it didn't get like that anger didn't cognitively fuse with his mind. It didn't sort of hijack his mind off onto that path. So he said, I observed it. I observed that anger, not getting caught up, but there comes anger. There goes anger. And he said, the reason I've able to do that is because I've meditated since I was 6 years old. Now, maybe we haven't meditated since we were 6 years old. However, we probably know from our own practice how more and more we're able to stop that reactivity before it comes out in regrettable emotional episodes of what we say and what we do. So that's being fully prepared. So taking those opportunities to practice when we read something in the news headline and you go, oh, really? Not again? Or, you know. Anyway, there's a lot of that I find at the moment. In fact, I usually read all the news feed and I stopped because there was only one topic. No, enough. I don't need to hear any more for my own mental health. Of course, got to know what's happening in the world so we can cultivate compassion and so forth. But yeah, there's a limit. Otherwise, if we become completely depressed and discouraged, the study of this practice will be a complete and total waste of time. So just looking at the mind training like the rays of the sun on this, we should take lightly every mental or physical difficulty that befalls us, be it great, moderate or slight, to take it lightly. So years ago when I was traveling a lot to America and I'd pick up an airport book to read. So I remember getting into the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and the next book was It's All Small Stuff. And it made me think that it's really the small stuff that we then react to and overinflate, and it becomes a huge drama in our mind, and then we tell others and there's a shared drama, and then we go on, and then we really blow it up big time. If we look at this, taking lightly every mental or physical difficulty that we can intervene at the earliest opportunity when our mind tends toward that imbalance. We lose our sense of equanimity, mental quiescence. And so, again, when I was working in education and we had a research project in the high schools and primary schools, that was, it went from an anti-racism project to an anti-bullying project over the years. But it was basically having these kids recognize it's too late when anger is manifest, when it's the kick in the punch in the school playground, or even worse these days, the bullying that goes on. But to recognize when it's just latent in our minds. And this was something that Paul Ekman was really interested when we did the Cultivating Emotional Balance training. How early can we shine that light of awareness when our mind is tending towards that imbalance, when those disturbing emotions arise? How early can we intervene there? So the earliest we can intervene, when it's still latent, we say it hasn't yet got power, then we can do something about it. Then we can take it lightly. Then we can let it go. But if we let it sort of fester there, and they talk about emerging, where it's just about to come out, when we're fuming in our mind, but that maybe we don't catch it till then. Hopefully we do catch it by then, but then manifest. And so these kids, it was like year 11 training year 9, year 10 training year 8, and so on down to grade 3. They could all do this. We used fun activities, drama activities, because it was actually through a drama education organisation. It's pretty amazing that the kids could actually themselves notice when those instances arose in their mind. Has it so far stopped bullying in schools? Well, maybe the bullies never, sort of got the message, but we need to introduce that in, thought transformation in schools at an early age. We haven't all been like the Dalai Lama to meditate from 6 years old. We haven't had those opportunities, but we know from the time we have had the power of that. So going on with this quote, whatever the circumstances in happy times or hard times, whether we're at home or in a foreign country, in a village or a monastery, they're often talking to monks, right? In the company of human or non-human friends, we should think of the many kinds of sentient beings in the boundless universe afflicted with similar troubles. So we have talked about this previously. Someone who experiences the same back pain or the cancer or the same difficulties with others, and make prayers that our own sufferings may serve as a substitute for theirs and they be parted from that misery. Considering how wonderful it is to have fulfilled the purpose of our practice of compassion by taking on the sufferings of others, we should sincerely rejoice. So I would say any time when we notice that negativity arising in our mind is an opportunity to rejoice. Gotcha. Sort of however we want to say it, really to rejoice that we got it, that we turned the mind away from the negativity. When we enjoy happiness and prosperity and suffer no lack of food, clothing, dwelling, friends, or spiritual masters, thus be it, but possess these external conditions in abundance, and when suffering no internal problems, such as the sudden discomfort caused by mental or physical sickness. So I think about this guy who's just been charged for, it's a bizarre story, wasn't it? Did he total his own car and then he killed that guy, and then he was found on a boat naked? I mean, all of this tells you there's a mentally unhinged being there. All tells you that. Yeah, so as a result of that huge mental suffering.
The guy saw that he rolled his own car and the guy stopped to help him. And ironically,
the guy stopped to help him. And he was the one he killed.
Well, maybe he just didn't have the power to be able to.
But he had the calm to have that heart of compassion when he did die, because he was going to help the guy. Wow. Yeah. We're able, yeah. So when others are like that, we are able to put faith in the practice, so that we're not the ones like my, when I visited the Philippines, I think the first time, and there were landslides, there was flooding, there was all sorts of environmental disasters going on. And this, very Catholic woman said, what has God got against us? And it's just like, at least we say, it's not God's fault. At least we've got that faith and we can put that into practice. I feel sorry for God getting all the rap for everything that goes wrong.
I think no thoughts of the word brain, the word crazy, mad.
Mad, yeah. Yeah. Well, it does make your mind crazy. Anger makes it's a total poison for the mind. And we talk about the 3 poisons, and you can see it's just like you lose all judgment. I always wonder if you recorded conversations you had out of anger and played them back, would be so embarrassed. Actually, someone sent me a really angry text one time, and then later reflected on it and sent me another one saying, oh, I'm so sorry, because they still had the text on their phone. So at least they saw, I was a Dharma practitioner. So yeah. Anyway, that's what happens, isn't it? So thinking that, the power of practice at a time of the 5 degenerations, that we are able to engage in the practice is really the ripening of our huge practice in past lives, that we've really accumulated a lot of merit, and we need to accumulate, if we think about it that way, accumulate more and more, so that our mind is less and less disturbed, and we have more and more the skills to deal with increasing difficulties. Because when I think about the predictions of this time of degeneration, in some ways I think we ain't seen nothing yet. Like, it's going to get worse and worse and worse, I think about that in terms of the temperature. How much can the human body tolerate? Every year we're breaking records. And just on that level, let alone on the mental level. Again, one of the headlines today about the increase in youth mental health issues. And that was predicted after COVID lockdown. Again, WA was spared a lot more than other states, but that increased. And these are the young people. The young people of today are the future leaders wherever they go into, business or politics or community leaders, whatever. And I think, how's their mental health? So therefore, it is essential to endeavour to accumulate merits on the basis of pure ethics, which is really the small scope, isn't it? That intention of refraining from non-virtue and engaging in virtue to accumulate as much merit as possible. And this at a time when the world's increasingly unethical. So that's why we have to have a stronger mind to say, no, I'm not going there. Just because they do it, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to do it. And that will become, or is becoming, increasingly harder. It was already hard previously. I remember when Lama Yeshe first ordained Sangha in FPMT, we have the donka. These days we all wear the, maroon. And those who have a Geshe degree have the 2 colours, the yellow, and it denotes that sort of level of study. And Lama Yeshe offered to the Sangha the 2-tone one, because he said it's so much more difficult for Westerners in this age to maintain vows. So in recognition, and to study and practice. So in recognition of that, he did that. It's faded out because you know, people who go to India and be in teachings with His Holiness will say, "Oh, we've got a lot of geshis here." Anyway, we're quite happy to wear like this. It's not about the colours of what we wear, but just to say that was the reason. So if you see older students, Sangha members who are not geshis wearing that, that's why. We're probably like, well, Lama bestowed that on me. In recognition. So the difficulty of maintaining pure ethics, we have to acknowledge and not just beat ourselves up for not, I mean, do the best we can, but not beat ourselves up when we fall short, but, you know, apply a remedy.
I've noticed too, I think, like in the family, that there's almost an expectation that even though you say you're going to do something,
Yeah.
Which has caught me out a few times. It's like,
Yes.
Like, they don't expect manners, people to have manners or follow through.
To follow through. So, yes.
I'm not here at the centre me better on that.
Yeah, we see it in lots of situations. I remember when I first started visiting prisons and I was told, whatever you say, do not make a promise that you can't keep. You know, do not make a promise that you can't keep. You can say, I'll try my best to do that or to get that for you, but don't promise if you can't keep it. And I got caught out big time early in ordination when, anyway, some event, it was a relics tour and Geshe Tashi Sering was in Sydney and we were having a Sangha lunch. Oh, it wasn't. It was in the mountains, actually. Anyway, no, it was way west in Sydney. That's right. It was in Sydney. Anyway, detail doesn't matter. So we're having this lunch and I was saying that Geshe Samten was coming the next day because he planned to come the next day. Now, could I at that time have said definitely coming? Maybe not, because he was planning to, but he didn't say I'm definitely coming. But I said that. And then he didn't come. And then I got, whoa, big time, roused on. And I thought, well, actually, if I think about it, it was my ego saying that, or, oh, I'm relaying this very important message. Early days. So I learned that lesson early on. Do not do that. So this is this point here, anyway, from this quote of not becoming depressed, discouraged, when we encounter even the slightest mental or physical problem. So this is those who cannot see the point of keeping ethics and being governed by pride. I just gave my example, arrogance, disdain, you know, can easily become discouraged because not maintaining pure ethics. We are taught not to behave like this, but to be undisturbed whether we encounter happiness or suffering. This is what we're aiming for our mind, to be undisturbed no matter what happens, good news, bad news, as in the Austrian woman Tara Lamo, who met her guru in Europe and then many years ago, and he said, come and see me in Nepal. And so she went to Nepal and he was in Boulder, and she had a street address, but the address didn't exist. So she had to have a lot of people telling her where to just try down this street. And went, anyway, so this one time happened and he was there and called out to her, and she spent the next 3 years with him having training, and then he sent her on up in the mountains on long retreat, and she was there for 20 years. And then he advised her to, one of her parents was unwell and she wanted to see her parent. And then he said, he actually advised her to come around Australia, actually, and maybe New Zealand as well, and to talk about her experience. So when she was in Sydney, one of the questions to her was, So it must be very different for you, you know, when you're in your cave up in the, she'd been talking about that and the conditions and so forth. And when you, like here in Sydney, and she said, it's the same. It's the same. Her experience was the same. We can say the external is very different, but that's what we want to have, is that sense of mental quiescence, mental stability. Then we are able to deal with all these adverse circumstances. Okay. So next one. The supreme, so we're going on to the fourth line of the third. The supreme of the third point. The supreme method is accomplished by the four practices. So here are these four practices: accumulating merit, purifying negativities, making offerings to harmful spirits, and seeking the help of Dharma protectors. Next one. So the first practice is accumulating merit. When you make offerings in order to create merit, the materials you use are not that important. What is significant is your attitude. In other words, I might say, oh, well, His Holiness said it's not important what materials I use, so I'll just offer whatever. But it's the attitude, not an attitude of miserliness. It's an attitude of you want to offer the best. So here, when people were bringing in items to offer to Guru Rinpoche to be, you know, part of the filling of the statue, I made sure to say, not because, oh, you want to get rid of it. That is not the right attitude. The attitude is that you're offering, and you know, all these amazing things were offered, and I thought, wow, people are really, you know, this is my precious water that I got from Tibet, and the precious rocks, and the precious this and that, and they all have a story, and you know, that was wonderful to see that it's really coming from, you know, holding that precious. So we want to make the best kind of offerings that we can. We are able to, but it's basically saying, if you don't have much to offer, of course, the practice of generosity is the wish to give anyway, is the wish to give. So if we don't have a lot to offer, don't feel like you have to spend your last, you know, dollar and go without food or things like that. Not being in that situation currently, and I have to say, haven't been in that situation for a long time. And there are other teachings that say, you know, even you offer something, and then that gives you the capacity later to be able to offer better quality items. It sort of comes along. If we think about the young boy who offered dirt, you know, like offering a mandala to the Buddha. Now, we don't know what he was visualizing. It must have been something very pure, because then next life, then he's one of the close disciples of the Buddha. So just referring to the mind training again. If the merit, so this is a quote from a sutra of the Buddha, the questions of the Viradutta Sutra. If the merit of generating the awakening mind were to take physical form, it would fill the whole of space and still exceed that. Were someone to fill the Buddha fields with the most precious jewels, numerous as sand grains in the Ganges, and offer them to the protector of the world, and were someone else simply to fold their hands, so in prostration, out of respect for the awakening mind, this latter, that one, would be the superior offering, and its merits would be boundless. So it's making that point that, you know, it doesn't have to be your life savings that you might be anyway saving up for a retreat. here. And then Se Chulbu says, the accumulation of merit is as follows. If you wish for happiness, free of suffering, cultivate faith and respect towards the teachers and the three jewels, which are the causes of all happiness and accumulations, or happiness. Causes of all happiness gather the accumulations. So here, when we do reflect on the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, we look at the good qualities. We look at the good qualities of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the qualities of the teachings, the qualities of the teacher, the good qualities, not looking for the faults. That's really emphasized again and again. It's always said, if you look for faults, you'll find them. I mean, just look at relationships. If we focus on fault, don't worry, we'll then have a big doozy fight, usually, I think. So, you know, when we look at in the Guru Puja, in relation to the qualities of the teacher, you are wise, patient, honest, without pretense or guile. Your three doors were subdued. You have both sets of 10 qualities, no sutra and tantra, no the tantra rituals, and are good at drawing and explaining. And then, so when we're looking at relating to a spiritual teacher, we're reflecting on those qualities. And we might have done that sometime way back in discovering Buddhism and then forgotten about it. But we need to continue to refresh that in our Guru Yoga practices, our daily practices. So practicing day by day and looking at qualities of the, not just the qualities of the Guru, inseparable from the Buddha. So we can look at the Buddha's qualities. The Guru kinder, then we talk about kinder than all the past, present, future Buddhas of all the 10 directions, because we haven't so far been subdued by the Buddha's teaching. And so manifesting in a form, how precious was that the other day with His Holiness of having a Chenrezig empowerment. And on the 18th of October, His Holiness will be bestowing Padmasambhava Guru Rinpoche empowerment. So very timely for us. Yeah. So we talk about, you know, even the kindness of teaching us the Dharma, the kindness of teaching us the Dharma, and even one of the pores of the Buddha, of the Guru, being an object of respect. And so here, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche explained, the pores of the Guru are all the students, all these fellow students, so we have respect for each other. The fellow students of His Holiness Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, at least that. We may have other gurus in common, but we at least have that. We may have taken tantric empowerments together, and we talk about respect for our Vajra brothers and Vajra sisters. So having respect for each other, as Lama Yeshe said, the Dharma Center, this is our training ground. I always think to myself, if I can't do it here with people who are like-minded and have the same gurus, how on earth will I benefit other sentient beings of completely different mindsets and so forth? So this is really our practice ground. So they are, as it says in the Guru Puja, a field of merit more highly praised than all the Buddhas, past, present, and future of all the 10 directions. And when we have the verse in relation to the qualities of the Guru that we recite 3 times, LC 53, the Kyoni Lama one. You are my gurus, you are my yidams, you are the dakinis and dharma protectors. From now until enlightenment, I shall seek no other refuge than you. So here we have gurus, yidams, dakinis, and dharma protectors. So we can think about the whole field of merit here, representing, you know, our guru representing that. In this life, the bardo and all future lives, hold me with your hook of compassion, free me from samsara and nirvana's fears. So from the sufferings of samsara and the bliss of nirvana, lower nirvana. Grant all attainments, be my constant friend, and guard me from interferences. So we recite that 3 times so that we are able to sort of contemplate that. And then, as Rinpo Rinpoche said, we recite it as if we're, tugging on the robes of the Lama, begging. I prefer the prostrating at the throne of the Lama, because I don't want to tug on their literally robes. I'm not quite sure. But that sort of sense of desperation, like, really, I need your help. So ways we can do that. And then reflecting on the qualities of particular of the Buddha, inseparable from our Guru. So there's many presentations on that. And we have like the 10 powers of the Buddha. The power of knowing. First of all, before that, the Buddha is free from all fears. Jigme. So we talk about fearlessness. The Buddha sitting on the throne with the bodhisattvas, the lion, snow lions, the pairs of snow lions representing the fearlessness, right? So able to engage. Wouldn't it be great to be beyond fear, never having fear? So never being responsible, but never being fearful of saying things that need to be said, of doing things and not worrying about, what people are going to think of me, will they come along for the ride or whatever, of just doing what needs to be said, done. Buddha has skillful means to free others from fear. So here I can think of, for example, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. There are many images of Rinpoche doing many practices for animals and, sort of stroking them and pacifying them and connecting them with the Dharma and so forth, spending time with them. Buddha has great compassion for all living beings, whether or not they are close to the Buddha, or whether they've helped the Buddha or not. So it's having this mind of even regard, not because you help me, not because you're my friend, but because you're alive, you have a mind, therefore you have Buddha nature, therefore you're a potential Buddha, and I'm going to help you along the way. So the power of knowing the consequences of all karmic actions. So the many advices, for example, that Lama Zopa Rinpoche, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, gave us, for example, for COVID, to help pacify the impact of COVID. Way back, I remember with the earthquakes, what was that, 2018 or 19? And we had to do some millions of Kshitigarbha mantras and practice to help pacify the impact of earthquake. I don't think it even happened in San Francisco, at least that one. There was a lot, in the Pacific Rim, disturbances like that going on. And we can use many examples to think like that. The power of knowing the previous causes for all karmic results in detail. We don't know that. We make well-educated guesses and from the understandings of how karma works. So we've heard the teachings. We usually are able to do that in terms of creating the future merits and conditions for best possible outcomes in future lives. However, to know in detail, just as Shakyamuni Buddha said to Ananda when the old man who wanted to ordain and Ananda sent him away, or sent him to Shariputra, who sent him away, whichever way, didn't see any good qualities in him. And of course, that's the story of the Buddha having the clairvoyance, because he can see all past lives of all beings, to see that that was a ripening of when he was that fly on the cart of dung going around a stupa, etc., etc. and could see, okay, that's now ripened, and ordained him. You know, the others around him, even highly realized beings, couldn't. The power of knowing the various wishes of all living beings, So knowing what our spiritual aspirations are, or whether we indeed have those. You know, the Buddha knows when somebody's ready to progress on the spiritual path, and will give them instructions or make teachings available according to their level. So even like many people would ask Lama Zopa for advice, and some people maybe had the same question, they'll give them different advice to other people, because it's like, well, knowing your capacity, your mental capacity, knowing your spiritual capacity and where you are on the path. So that also knowing the various dispositions of all living beings, you know, whether they're following a Mahayana path, whether they're following a Hinayana path, whether they're following a other faith. So that His Holiness says, if you're a Christian, be a good Christian. If you're Muslim, be a good Muslim. He's not saying everyone has to become Buddhist. He's saying that's your predisposition. Make the best use of it. And actually, if you think that anybody of any spiritual tradition, if they uphold the ethics of that tradition, I just immediately go to the Crusades, and it's like, how did that ever happen? How Christian was that? There's many examples, isn't there? And it's like, yeah, well, even today, there's all of this partiality in some people's minds. Yeah, I've got the one way. The power of knowing the scope. So when we're talking about in the Buddhist path, of which level of practice, although as Lama Tsongkhapa said, the 3 scopes for us on a Mahayana path are a practice for one individual, but with a Mahayana motivation. So when we take refuge and bodhicitta. That's the prayer that we recite 3 times a morning, 3 times at night. So we're doing it with a bodhicitta motivation, which is different to if you take refuge. Same refuge in a way, refuge in Buddha Dhamma Sangha, but in the bodhicitta motivation then empowers that refuge. The power of knowing the different meditations appropriate, you know, at different times for different individuals for their liberation. The power of knowing the previous lives of all beings. So as I mentioned earlier, knowing exactly where they're coming from, so knowing exactly what karma is ripening and being able to guide accordingly. The power of knowing the body leaving process and death and rebirth of all living beings. So we can say that, you know, while we're alive and have engaged, you know, have Dharma practice and so forth, as His Holiness says, you know, as this world is coming to an end, if we keep practicing, practice well, so they will be reborn in a pure land. So it's not like predicted, I'm going to be reborn here and here and here. But the Buddha would know the conditions that led me in which lifetime to this particular rebirth and circumstances there. So, for example, when I requested Lama Zopa for ordination, one of the things that Rinpoche said was, oh, many times ordained, you know, past lives. It made sense to me because it was when I was a young kid, I wanted to be ordained. I was Catholic. I thought I was becoming a Catholic nun, hang out with the nuns. And anyway, that changed. My regret about that, I didn't ask Rinpoche in what traditions I'd been, but many times, okay, Rinpoche, just tell me which ones. Doesn't make a difference, here I am. So you just say, if they all ripened in this lifetime to be ordained in, you know, the most precious Mahayana tradition, following Lama Tsongkhapa and his sublime teachings. So like that. And then the qualities of a Buddha not shared with Arya beings, not shared with those who have a direct perceptual realization of emptiness, whether they be solitary realizers, hearers, or bodhisattvas, Arya bodhisattvas. The Buddha's body does not have any displeasing qualities. So even as a previous Karmapa, when he he didn't show the aspect of a pleasant body, it was said. So why you want a pleasant body and speech and everything attractive about you is to draw people to you, like the Dalai Lama, you know, that energy that draws people to you. Anyway, this previous Karmapa who didn't have that physical aspect, they said he was ugly. I'm trying to avoid that word. It's all in the eye of the beholder anyway. And so made a vow to always be born beautiful. And if you see the current Karmapa, I think doing very well in that, upholding that to such an extent that when he first started teaching, you know, when he came out of Tibet and when he first started teaching as a teenager, and men and women were swooning. The Dalai Lama said, put on sunglasses and draw in that energy. So that, you should think, what energy would they have if we could cope with it? You know? Yeah. A Buddhist speech does not contain any exclamations. I always think Lama Zopa going, wow, 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 amazing, amazing, amazing. So there's quite a lot of explanations, especially when you see Venerable Jones' transcript that goes on for lines of wow, wow, wow. But exclamations in terms of, it's a measured speech. I always think that Rinpoche was doing that to get us to rejoice or uplift our minds or even get us to be awake in those late hours. A Buddha's mind never forgets anything. Never forgets anything. That's that's a quality we all want, I think. Or maybe there's some things we wish we want to have amnesia about. But really to remember all the teachings, to remember everyone you've met. As His Holiness says, I meet everybody as a long-lost friend, or maybe not long-lost, but as a dear friend. And you can think, yeah, probably knows that, you know, when they were connected in previous lives and so forth. Very amazing. And not forgetting in this life. So we don't actually, in case you don't know who I am, this is who I am. They know. You don't have to say who you are. Yeah. A Buddha never leaves meditative concentration on reality, so on emptiness, even when acting. So this is a quality of a Buddha, engaging in activities for others while being in single-pointed concentration on emptiness. Right, being able to, in the same mind, engage like that. Yeah. Rinpoche always comes to mind in this, that, you know, he'd be meditating and then he'd be talking with people, and because Venerable Roger would say, he'd remind Rinpoche of something and goes, oh, that practice is done. When we're doing it just now, as I was dictating the letter to you. A Buddha does not experience any false appearances, so no sense of hallucination, elaborating on top of what is there, what isn't there, just sees everything directly, just as it is. A Buddha is never so indifferent as to not check who is ready to make spiritual progress and to help them accordingly. A Buddha's good intentions never decline. So even as Chen Rezig, at that point on the Bodhisattva path, had that sort of moment of despair or sadness that he'd been doing all this practice to alleviate the suffering of the world, and looked around and thought, the world's still suffering. And then the tears came, white Tara, green Tara, saying, don't worry, I'll help, swift energy of Tara, I've got your back. And that was where, because the prediction, well, he said, if ever it does happen, I have that moment of despair, may my body be split into 1,000 pieces, which is what happened, which is why we have 1,000 Chen Rezig, because Buddha Amitabha, his guru, put all the pieces back together again. So this was because of your great altruistic compassion that this happened. So Buddha's enthusiastic perseverance never declines. As His Holiness Dalai Lama says, never give up. And again, when I think about our precious gurus, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Zopa means patience. And I think, yeah, that enthusiasm to continue eon after eon, lifetime after lifetime to guide us. Although I'm not saying Rinpoche has ever given up on guiding people, but I remember at the last retreat in Bendigo where somebody was raising a point about anger, and Rinpoche gave them a talking to about, they were a long-term practitioner. They'd been around a long time, and just basically saying, you haven't got the basic teaching. Because everybody shrinks, At that time, Rinpoche was very, very sense of urgency. You get it. Sense of urgency. Of come on, you've got to get it. You've got to get it. You've got to get it. Because why? Westerners have to get it because the Tibetan lamas are dying off, as we see. And it's up to, it's up to the seniors of our, Western leaders to keep that alive. And the only way that we're going to keep the Dharma alive in this world is by having realization. So this is why Rinpoche, this sense of urgency to do that. A Buddha's mindfulness of all beings never declines. So never leaves the gaze. The Buddha is always encompassing all sentient beings equally at all times. A Buddha's single-pointed concentration never declines, and a Buddha's wisdom, understanding, emptiness never declines. So these two combined in the one mind stream. So the ultimate bodhicitta mind of the wisdom realizing emptiness combined with the laser-like concentration mind. All the actions of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind are preceded by and carried out with deep awareness of both appearances, how things appear, and their lack of true existence. So we, meantime, train ourselves like this. People said to me they would put up labels in their kitchen, on the cupboards, on everything, merely labelled, merely labelled, merely labelled, merely labelled. We remind ourselves it's empty of inherent existence. It looks like existing. I'm looking at the taras, look like they're existing from their own side. But we know that they're empty of inherent existence. They are dependent arisings and so forth. And when we investigate, we can tell the whole story of that. The Buddha maintains his omniscient awareness, spontaneous and non-conceptual. In other words, not gone beyond training. The fifth path is the path of no more learning, having accomplished all the trainings. That is a Buddha. A Buddha sees his past, present, and future with omniscience, neither being attached to it or hindered by it. So his own omniscient mind. So not being fearful when we all freak out, like the Y2K. What are we going to do? The world's coming to an end. And then we had the Maya prophecy. That was 2012, I think, the world was coming to an end. Many times the world was coming to an end. There's probably a few more prophecies. And His Holiness just says, yeah, don't worry, just go live somewhere else. Plenty to choose in the universe, other universes. So not being disturbed by it doesn't mean you have complacency. Because on the other hand, in relation to our world system, the Buddha says this, the Buddha, His Holiness, this, he wrote Our Only Home, talking about this planet and the need for environmental responsibility, need to care for each other and so forth. Okay. Body born of 10 million virtues. So we not just the 112 marks and minor signs of the Buddha that we contemplate and meditate on and develop familiarity with, a reflection of our own good qualities, but born of 10 million virtues. That 10 million isn't a precise number, it's just that we need a huge amount of accumulation of merit, of accumulation of virtues to attain that body and excellence. Speech that fulfills the hopes of infinite beings. So this is pacifying fears, that leads for ways out of situation. We talk about the 60 eloquent qualities of the Buddha's speech. In my experience, a lot of times that has been the succinctness when you go to your Lama and have this, you know, complicated question, and they just give you this couple of words of advice, and that's it. It's like they cut through all the my neuroses, kavump, just, you know, just right there, not disturbed by my going, they're not going, oh, really, that happened to you and that happened to you? No, just, this is it. This is what to do. Mind that sees all knowables as they are, so that everything to be known is known by a Buddha. There's nothing, everything to be cognized, to be recognized, to be known is known by a Buddha. Right. So these are the qualities. So this is that quote was from Lama Tsongkhapa. All right. So one way of reflecting. So there's a lot to reflect on here. Think that the experience of suffering admonishes you to think such thoughts. Engage extensively in making offerings to the three jewels. So we have an opportunity right now, not this very second, making offerings, particularly for having the consecration tomorrow of our precious statues as representatives of Buddha Dharma Sangha. For example, the offering implemented by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, so FPMT, offering every month, offering robes to the Shakyamuni Buddha at Bodh Gaya, Shakyamuni Buddha, and, you know, I don't know how many times a day those robes get changed, because many beings offer robes to that, because they're aware of the special qualities of offering to that particular representation of the Buddha at the place where the Buddha became enlightened. Yeah. So yeah, reflecting like that at times when we're engaging in difficulties, and thinking of offering charity, in other words, generosity to ordinary people, to the needy, and thinking about it as also an opportunity to make that Dharma connection. Venerable Yeshe, for example, on Mondays goes off to whichever organisation, providing meals and so forth. And I think that's wonderful, because you're making that Dharma connection as well as making that offering, you know, food. Making prayers for the cessation of your cyclic expectations and apprehensions, in other words, samsara, offering mandalas and other articles to teachers and the three jewels. So offering mandala, which of course we're actually having a teaching on a Sunday afternoon of the offering of mandalas, offering body, speech and mind. We'll be offering mandala to Geshe Zopa as, you know, respect for him, you know, accepting to consecrate Guru Rinpoche and the other statues here, and offering other articles to the teachers in the three jewels. So I mentioned the robes of Lama Zopa offering, but we can think of, you know, making offerings to the Sangha community, making offerings to our teachers, making offerings on our altars, and generating that faith and respect towards them. So through our Guru Yoga practice of having faith and respect towards our teachers, cultivating that, because as it says in the foundation of all good qualities is the root of all our own good qualities, is correct devotion to the Guru. Go for refuge and generate the awakening mind, and make the following appeal with fervent joy. Since I am ignorant, please care for me in the best way possible. That's pretty succinct. Best possible outcome. I don't know, because I'm not a Buddha, I'm not a clairvoyant, I'm not, to know what's the best possible outcome. I know what I want, but is that the best possible outcome? So we do at those times, make supplication. So here, as Geshe Chökyi commentary, if being sick is best, please make me ill. It's not something we wish upon ourselves, is it? But as for my example of better than eons of hot health, thank you, Choden Rinpoche. If being cured is best, please restore my health. If being dead is best, please make me die. May not be something we wish for anytime soon. But if we think about our lamas who have that control over life and death and are able to determine their own most beneficial time of death and most beneficial rebirth, so that we can aspire to achieve that state. If long life is best, please prolong my life. If shorter life is best, please shorten my life. Again, we're not putting our hand up for that anytime soon. And the people that do put their hand up, unfortunately, it's not from this virtuous motivation, but fear of suffering or experiencing suffering. But we can look at Lama Atisha when Atisha consulted Tara about whether he should go to Tibet, and Tara said it'd be very, very beneficial for the Dharma and for Tibet and the continuation of the Dharma. However, your life will be shortened 20 years. He went, right? He didn't say, oh, no, then I won't go. We're talking about a great advanced practitioner here. May all enjoy the fortune of enlightenment. Okay. Next one. So the next practice is purification of negative karma. Oh, actually, go back. I didn't do the final bit of this. The first bit. So we've talked about the offerings. It's good. In order to create merit, the materials you used are not important. What is significant is your attitude. So we got up to there. You should develop an attitude of sharing whatever prosperity you have with others. So this is the perfection of generosity, of that wish to share, that wish to give at every opportunity, giving food, medicine, clothing, shelter, protection from fear, making offerings. We've talked about making offerings to the Dharma Center to continue on to the Sangha community, continue to have Dharma teachers and teachings. And then as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, at death time, I mean, don't wait till we're in a deathbed and we can't make those decisions. But, preparing for death. And Rinpoche says to give a third to support the Dharma, to your gurus and so forth. Give a third to charity, and give a third for a party. So I was reflecting on that this morning and thinking of our dear, precious, Venerable Dronsa when she passed away, that before she died, because I guess, she died of cancer, and it was, she knew she was dying for some months, let's put it that way. So all the holy objects in her, she put names of it. And so when various it was generally for other members of Sangha. So when the nuns came to visit, and she'd say, this one's for you and this one. And some people wanted it left there till after she passed, and others took at the time. And she gave away all her holy objects to the Sangha. She sponsored holy objects. She sponsored a pilgrimage with Geshe-la and her daughter's boyfriend, and a few other friends, to Dharamsala to see His Holiness. And then there was a big party after she died. She said, I don't want any sort of testimonials to my life. I don't want anybody talking about my life at all. At all. So she, because she was we used to call her the chai nun, because she loved the chai and she was always bringing the chai up the hill. So we had a chai. She instructed that we have chai and cake, and there was 100 or so people, and so everyone was bounteously catered for with a party. So it was like really following those instructions, and it was so wonderful. And just one example there. Yeah. Dedicate your merits to common benefit. So sharing our own merits, our own roots of virtue and performance, and the practice of generosity. So as it says in the perfection of generosity, I seek your blessings to complete the perfection of generosity through the guideline teachings of enhancing the mind that gives without attachment. The mind that gives without attachment. It's really important, and this was part of the advice that Rinpoche gave for the time of death, to make sure there's nothing we still feel attached to, because that's going to not work out well in future lives. So many years ago, I'm not sure if they have one again now, he's passed away, but there was the Geshe who was expert in exorcism. And so he would be called in. Like there was one nun who was basically taken over by a spirit. And so this Geshe would come in and talk to the spirit and say, what do you want? What do you want? And this particular example, he says, I want my pink thermos. I want my pink thermos. And it's like, pink thermos. Being attached to a pink thermos. We don't want that, right? Or any thermos. And what had happened, there was one of the villagers, and he visited that room and left a thermos there. And now this nun was in that room. So it was attached to the place because he wanted a pink thermos from that attachment. So he got exercised or however, and I guess they went, here's your pink thermos, now you can go. I mean, actually, my sister-in-law, I was talking to a friend the other day about, we were talking about different religions and belief in ghosts. And I said, oh yeah, we have belief in ghosts, we have belief in spirits. My sister-in-law, one house they moved into, and she was always convinced when she came to the bottom of the stairs, there was a ghost there. And so one day she said, what do you want? A cup of tea. She went and made a cup of tea and the ghost left. At Vajrayana Institute, we used to have, because it had been a nursing home, a lot of people had died there. We thought there was a ghost because the doorbell would ring randomly when there was nobody there. When you wanted it to ring, it sort of wasn't working properly. Randomly, you sort of go, we know there's no one there, but we'll open the door anyway. So little things that happen around the place with the electrics and with the door. And just think, oh, there probably are spirits there because it was a nursing home before. Anyway, so yeah, we don't want to be attached to those things and be stuck in a place because we're so attached. And so giving for the benefit of all. And if we think about it, that we're sharing that for the benefit of all, again, I look at our Indigenous people traditionally, this sense of reciprocity, of sharing things that is not like mine. I think in the 70s, or was it the 80s when we had the sort of co-ops and so forth, and there's trying to build shared communities. But it was there in Indigenous culture from the beginning of sharing, of reciprocity. Of course, you know, that changed when people moved. Like I'm thinking about a friend of mine who was Aboriginal educator in Sydney who, you know, got her own house, and she was a professor and so forth. And you'd go and visit her, and she said, "Oh, the cousins have just been. They've taken the stereo. They've taken this. They've taken that. What to do?" Yeah. Yeah. So maybe we don't want to give her away our stereo. Maybe we do. Maybe it is for the common benefit. Yeah. So to all sentient beings. So here we're thinking past, present, future, all the 10 directions, even visualizing, because just think, it is the aspiration to give. Visualizing, which we do a lot in our practice. You know, we visualize all sentient beings around us and them engaging in the practice so that we visualize them getting the benefits of the practice and so forth, which empowers our practice. So dedicating, time flies, your merit to the common benefit of all sentient beings and direct your aspiration to the attainment of Buddhahood. Okay, we might be leaving it. If I think about examples again with Lama Zopa Rinpoche of, you know, giving away a shamtab to, so backtrack, when Venerable Roger was the attendant to Lama Yeshe would say to him, "Go to Zopa's room and get all the offerings before he's giving them all away." And he said, "I never got there in time." And then one time when he saw this Geshe come out, and then he went in, and Rinpoche was only wearing, we have an underskirt, he was only wearing the underskirt, Shamtab's the lower robe, and sort of like, "Rinpoche, we're going to the airport." He said, "Oh, the Geshe needed it. I gave it to him." Just scowl around for a shamtab for him. And I remember friends giving Rinpoche some malas to consecrate, to use an auction for fundraising for the centre. And they went back to pick them up. And Rinpoche said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I gave all those away." So it's teaching us to let go of things all the time. And so, yeah. Alrighty. Yeah, we'll leave it there for today. Thought I'd get to the end of this. At this point, anyway, so we're still on the practice of purifying negativities. We are on the next one is the practice of purifying negativities. So we'll get there next time. The next time is going to be, I think, the first Friday in November, because I'm in Bunbury and then I'm on pilgrimage. Yeah. It's exciting, yeah.
3rd of November.
3rd of November. Okay. Stop there for today. And dedicate to attain all these wonderful qualities ourselves. Page 17. Gewadi Nyududa Lama Sange Drugine Droachi Kyamalupa De Salagopa Shu Chanchu Sencho Grimposhe Makye Panam Ge Kushi Ge Panyampa Me Payang Gongni Gongdu Kawa Shu. Long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. 19. Jig ten kam di pin di malu pagang le jui sampeli jinu kadrin some tenzin gyatsulam so waditsu. Tu je lo long life prayer for Tenzin Osul, page 23. Lord of Dharma, who in accordance with the various dispositions of those to be subdued, makes clear in the light of your well-spoken advice the sacred Ganden tradition, essence of Buddhist teachings, O foremost and holy Lama, to you are supreme. O Lama, please, please live long. Not yet. I was going to wait till after this, but I can end it right now.